Okay, got it. All right, welcome, welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us um, this afternoon. This is Tuesday, August the 29th, and our Reverend Lady Mother Sandra Addison Brito here at Triumph Life Center at 950 Bergen Street. And we are beginning a new series for the Divine Feminine Study Group. And just give me a minute and we will get started. So if you would just do me a favor, and if you're joining us on YouTube, if you would hit like and share so that others will know that we're here. If you have not subscribed to our YouTube channel, would you do that? Just hit that little bell, I think is all you need to do. And then like and share the link with your social media contacts. All right, so that they'll be able to also join us and know that we're live and in person here at Triumph 950 Bergen Street in Newark. So again, I thank you for joining in today. And we're going to get started in just a moment. With just a few more days and August will be over. We're ending summer and it's been a beautiful summer. And I hope your summer has been as wonderful as mine. I really, truly enjoyed this summer and I'm just thankful for all that went on this week, this month, this summer here at Triumph Life in Newark. Remember, subscribe if you have not already, and hit the like and share with your social media friends. We're coming at you live from right here, 950 Bergen Street. Just give me one moment. Yeah, I'm excited about our topic. I'll introduce it in just a moment. But this is going to be a really interesting discussion, I believe, and I think you really will not only just enjoy, but be challenged, cause you to think, and really challenge you to push back on the barriers of your ideas about family and what that means and how that's changing. That's what we're going to be talking about. So one more moment as I'm trying to just bring everybody in here so we can share together and get started together. You can also place a comment on YouTube. If you're joining us by YouTube, you can comment, let us know where you're joining us from, and questions you may have. I will respond at the next session. You can also join us on Zoom room. It's still time. You can join via Zoom, and that number, the credentials are, just for a moment, let me make sure I have them right. The Zoom credentials are 566-003-8482, and the password is all caps TCNA. That's Triumph Church New Age 2023. Okay, all right. We're here. All right, so let's get started. So our topic for the next few weeks is going to be family structures and systems in the New Age. And so those of you that are a part of my New Age Triumph family, Kingdom or New Age, I think you'll be particularly interested in following and joining me for these lessons over the next few weeks. So it's family structures and systems in the New Age. Subtopic, the ties that bind. The ties that bind. All right, so let's get started. So let's just open up with a grounding for a moment. Let's just bring ourselves to center as we gather here in person, we gather on Zoom, as we gather on YouTube, and just clear our heads, clear our energy so that we're open to receive, we're open to hear, and open to experience what the Spirit has to offer on this afternoon. May each one that's joining this now or later bless, that you're challenged, that you're lifted up, that your awareness is expanded, and that this teaching, this discussion will be a blessing for you and your household. Ashe and amen. All right, so our country is changing. The ideas, of values, of religious beliefs, institutions of learning are all changing. Family structures and family systems are changing. And so let's just stop for a moment and ask ourselves, you think about for yourself, what is your definition of family? How do you define family? How do you think about your own family, whether it's your family now or your family past? How do you envision or define what family is? So family, when we think about it in a broad sense, is a dynamic institution and part of society. However you think family is, we know that it is dynamic, meaning that it's constantly changing, it's evolving, it's energetic, it's fluid, and it is an important, in fact, it may be the most important institution to our civilized world and society. The changes that we are seeing happening in society is mainly being ignited through the family structure and systems. And those changes are on a larger sociological level, an economic level, both macro and micro. And sometimes technologically, we see that advances in systems of production changes how we come together and how we organize in our family structure and system. Often we speak of family from a Christian perspective, and we default to what I call this elusive idea of what is referred to as quote unquote God's plan or God's order for the family. This is a way of thinking generally that takes one to the Bible and to a set of commonly rehearsed verses of scripture that supports our Western worldview of what we call the nuclear family, with a man and a woman as husband and wife and their children, with the man being the head of the household and the woman serving in some sort of subservient or role, a devoted role, a loving role in support of her husband, and the children who are obedient. That's the ideal idea of the family that we often hear projected or portrayed within our Christian ideology. But let me just suggest this, from the biblical perspective, the Bible is an ancient book that holds much wisdom. It's a book that I value, and it's probably my first book of choice from early childhood, and one that has impacted my life probably more than any other book I've ever read, and I've read a lot. But it's a very ancient book, and it's filled with much wisdom and insights into the mindset of its many authors. So when we say the Bible, we're really saying a collection of books. And that collection of books written by many, many different people over thousands of years. And even within some books, there are multiple authors per book. So it's many people whose mindset and worldview and ideas and pen and thoughts went into putting together what we call the Bible. But most importantly, when we think about these, the Bible and the many people that came together to write this book, or their ideas have been extrapolated and contained in this book, it's really the worldview of those that wrote the book. It's the worldview of those whose ideas went into developing the book. It's the worldview of those who edited the book. It's the worldview of those who translated the book from one language to another language. And it's, and another way of thinking about it is their self-understanding and their understanding of the world, the cosmos, the earth, their place in the world. It's their understanding of the gods that they understood and embraced, the goddesses, and their place in time and space. So it's important for us not to forget that. Even though we read it as a book that's written from a God view, it's a book that's written from a human view and their perspective of God. That's not to say that that does not contain a view of the divine, because some of their perspectives and their ideas and their view was indeed tapping into the divinity. And so we have to be careful as we parse through and understand what it is in this book that we're handling. What I would also suggest is that what the book also reveals to us, if we look closely and read in between the lines, from the point of view of the tellers of the stories that are contained in the book, to those who are not telling the story. So we have to always consider whose story or who's writing the story and who's not writing the story. What social economic position are they in? What social economic position are they not in? What's their gender? What's their class? What's their view of God or goddess? All of that is important. Who's telling the story and who is not telling the story. And through that, we're able to glimpse the complex world of human interactions with one another. Human interaction with one another, with animal life, and with nature. And what it ultimately reveals to us is the family ties and how family structures and systems have evolved as a way of forging the human family forward in an ever-changing environment. And in response to new knowledge, in response to a greater self-understanding, as well as increasing and diminishing fears and our need ultimately for one another to sustain our lives. At the very substratum of this is that we create families and we forge these interconnected structures and systems because we need each other. We need each other to live and to sustain and for the survival of our human family. So let's go on. A few of the controversial political hotbed issues today are actually taking place in the state of New Jersey. I want us to just think about some of the things that we're dealing with on a political landscape, on a sociological landscape, and how it is either impacting how we understand families, how it's changing the nature, structure, and system of family, or how family is interacting in a way to push back, change, evolve, etc. So a few of the many controversial hotbed issues today that are actually taking place in the country is happening right here in the state of New Jersey, where we are, Triumph for Life Center is. And some of it involves who should have the right to determine a child's gender. Should it be the parent or publicly funded school state system? Now, this seems like a no-brainer almost, because it wasn't but a few years ago when that wasn't even a topic of discussion, because you had a baby, the baby was born, it was determined at birth what the baby's gender was, and then there was a birth certificate issued and that deal was settled. But it's not so simple anymore. And so now we have this ongoing debate and issue, whose right it is to determine the gender of the child. Is it the parent's right? Is it the child's right? Or is it our school system? Is it the educational system? So according to the New York Post, an article on August 8th, New Jersey's Attorney General tries to block guidelines put in place by 3 school districts to tell parents if their child is changing gender identity. So here we have this fight this controversy between families, between parents, and between our school districts. The new policies would require the school to notify parents if their children formally wanted to change their gender identity, their pronouns or name, use different bathrooms, or change the gender of teams they play in. And so the controversy is, should a child be able to do that exclusive of their parents giving permission or having even knowledge? And should the school be able to permit that without informing the parent of that? And I know it's controversial, and on some level, I can see both sides. There's an idea that's embedded in our U.S. Government, within our U.S. Constitution, called parent patria. It's a Latin term that means parent of the nation. And in law, it refers to the public policy of the state to intervene in families or with the parenting when it's deemed that the parent's behavior is either neglectful or abusive to the child. That's how we have our state, the children's services, departments of children's services that are able to come into a home when there's an allegation of some kind of abuse or neglect, and make a determination as to perhaps even ultimately remove the child from the home. But that's under this notion of parents patria, P-A-R-E-N-S, P-A-T-R-A-E, P-A-T-R-I-A-E, I'm sorry. Under this idea, under our Constitution, it essentially is parents have the domain of raising their children as they see fit, as long as it doesn't fall under neglect or abuse. It's only in those situations where the government is allowed to come in and then intervene. And so parents are able to determine what religion their child is. Certainly when the child, the underage children, certainly when the child reaches maturity, the child can decide for themselves. But for minor children, from birth on, the parent is able to determine what religion they are, what their dietary restrictions are other than health issues, meaning if they're kosher, if they are of a religious tradition that's vegetarian, those kinds of things, where they live, where they go to school, what clothes they wear, even, if they're permitted to date romantically, what age? Some parents are more liberal and they allow their children to have romantic relationships at an early age, 13 or 14. Some say not until you're 16, you can't go on a date. But this has always been the purview of the parents within the family structure and household, and not the state. So it seems almost as if the state now is encroaching upon the rights of parents by, and on some level, even allowing or participating with the child in making a major shift in the child's life without the parents' consent. I think even still for underage students to even participate in a school field trip. I know parents used to when my kids were in school. I don't know. I could be wrong. It may not be true anymore. But when I was parenting, my children couldn't go on a field trip without the parent signing a permission slip. And so now, when we think about that, how are we shifting that? Well, let me just go to something else. I want you to think about that. Whose right is it to make decisions for minor children around religion, gender, behavior, school engagement, etc.? Is it the state or the parents? So these are going to be important questions as we move through this conversation in the next few weeks. As I said, I can see the argument and argue for both sides, but I want you to just think about this. In another controversial case, this one out of Florida, and you may be more familiar with it, those of you that are not in the state of New Jersey, in the publicly funded New College of Florida, as I just recently learned about, 40% of the faculty resigned just as the college was opening last week. 40% of the faculty resigned. They resigned in response to the governor replacing the college president who had dismantled the diversity, equity, and inclusion department, which most colleges around the country haven't had for some time now. And it is believed that there's an effort now to dismantle the gender studies department. So this really caught my attention because that's the field that I teach in here in the state of New Jersey in a publicly funded college. I teach in women, gender, and sexuality studies. The governor of Florida stated at a recent news conference in response to the faculty resigning, and I'm quoting, he said, "Education is not about indoctrination, but should be about teaching what matters." This was at a news conference in response to the teachers resigning after he removed the college president and replaced someone who would do his bidding. Part of his defense, his response to this was education is not about indoctrination, but should be about teaching what matters. So let me just say first, I do agree that education should not be about indoctrination. Absolutely. Education shouldn't be about teaching one what to think, rather, but giving one the tools and skills to develop how to think more critically. However, my question for the governor would be the latter part of his response, which is who gets to determine what matters? If education is about what matters, who gets to determine that? The governor of the state, the school district, the college, those who have matriculated and have studied academically? Who gets to determine what matters? And isn't it a slippery slope when we begin to say this matters, but that doesn't? When we begin to slice away at what books are available to our young people, and it's at the undergraduate, at our elementary through high school, undergraduate, and grad school levels, begin to say this book is not important, or that information, or that knowledge is not important. Who gets to decide that? Certainly for parents who are footing the bill for the children to go to college, shouldn't they have a say in that? And why do we need such a narrow view of what matters? Why would it be more important to open up the field of knowledge and let students who are now entering college determine what matters to them? So there are other examples of what's happening around this country in this politically charged and polarized moment. And I'm sure you have other examples that you've heard that I may have also or may not. But at the core of this, I would suggest we are witnessing a historical moment. And at the core of this, our family structures and systems are being challenged to change, to evolve, and to meet the pressing and urgent needs of a new emerging world. We're shifting, the culture is shifting, society is shifting, our self-understanding is shifting, our interactions are evolving and changing, and therefore the very institution that frames us and prepares us to enter into society is being forced to change, or simultaneously it's changing, it's evolving and changing, and there's resistance to that. And that's not necessarily a negative thing, because all change involves resistance. And it's the resistance that allows for the change to fully take effect. It's like building a muscle or growing. Where there's resistance, that resistance is what enables the growth. So families are changing, without a doubt. And our discussions are often directed, my brothers and sisters that are watching me, my mindset and my work that I do is mainly directed towards those of you that are in faith communities. It's for us, because I believe that faith communities ultimately will or should lead the charge and establish the framework for this new emerging world. I mean, it is our responsibility as spiritual leaders, because the spirit is what It's the energy that we are seeing evolving and changing and helping people to develop their best selves energetically is what I believe we're called to do. So families are changing, and we may not like what we see, but they are changing nonetheless. We can either stand in the city square on the sidelines like someone watching a parade and shout and scream about what is wrong with our families, what is wrong with our world, and do our best to insist that we return back to some non-existent, unrealistic utopian past. Or we can move to the head of the line and take the lead and be the ones that are forging this path forward. And no, there is no template, there is no roadmap, there's no GPS for how we get to the future. We simply have to take one step at a time by faith as the Spirit is leading us. And that's where our faith is required, knowing that we don't know what we shall be. We don't know how we will evolve, but we know that we are changing and we cannot fear change. We embrace it and we move forward in the change. So let's take a moment and just look at what we know about how families are changing. Very dynamically and fluid. Some of us may not know these things because sometimes we are so immersed in our own living that we don't really feel what's happening around us. Kind of like being in the airplane, you can get to a certain level when you're flying where you don't even realize you're moving. You don't even realize that you move from one place to another. Certainly if it's a short flight, if you fall asleep for a few minutes, for an hour, you can wake up and be in a whole nother state or even in another country. But I would ask us to just try to come to be present and think about what's happening around us with our families, and not just from a negative mindset or view, but just look at this in a more holistic, at a macro level. So according to the Pew Research Institute, as of 2021, just 2 years ago, 25% of 40-year-olds in the United States had never been married. 40%. This was a major increase since even just 10 years prior, when it was 20%. So we are seeing that there's a trend here. According to this research, the trend is that fewer and fewer Americans are getting married. Let's look a little deeper. In 1980, it was just 6% of 40-year-olds that had never been married. 1980 was what, 42, 43 years ago. That percentage was 6%. We're now up to 40%. People born from the 1960s onward have increasingly delayed marriage. So those born from 1960, and that's what, like 60 years, 63 years ago, those 3 decades or 3 stories have increasingly rejected, or for whatever reason, have not gotten married. We have to think about that, as marriage has been the foundation of family, at least within the Judeo-Christian and the Western worldview, that increasingly the trend has been over the last 63 years that fewer and fewer and fewer and fewer people are getting married. While many unmarried 40-year-olds are living with their romantic partners, many of them are not cohabitating. So about 22% of those never married were cohabitating, meaning they're living with another romantic partner, but they're not married to them. According to the website Unmarried Equality, 112 million, or almost 47% of American population is unmarried. Almost half of the people, the adult population in this country, is unmarried. Think about that. Almost half of the adult population in the United States that's 18 and over are not married. Since 2005, the majority of US households have not been headed by married couples. 2005 is 18 years ago, one generation. This trend continues to increase with more than 51 million households headed by unmarried Americans. About 44% of all households, and the majority of households in 23 states. So that over almost half the country, this is represented. There are more than 31 million one-person households in the US, representing roughly 27% of all households, about a third. What's even also interesting is that of all live births, almost 40% were born to unmarried women, about 40%. Like the larger population, the unmarried population is diverse and is represented by people from every walk of life. What is maybe surprising to you is that the percentage of white versus Black Americans that are unmarried, and the percentage of male and female that are unmarried. So let's just take a look at this. So 46.6% of unmarried population or old 18 or older are male, while 53.4% are female. So slightly more female than male. 23% of the unmarried population are people of color, while 77% are white. I want you to just let that sink in for a minute. 23% of the unmarried population, 18 or older, are people of color, and that includes Black, Hispanic, Latino, while 77% are white. Now we know that 23% represents probably about a little more than what probably about what the people of color percentage represented in this country when you add Black, Latino, all non-white or Hispanic folks in this country. So about 23% people of color, 77% are white. What does it mean for families? What does it mean for the way we understand what family systems are and how we organize in a society as family? What does it mean for child rearing, for parenting? What does it mean for how we socialize, how we are socialized into community? What does it mean for how we build family ties? What does it mean for how we develop community? If the very foundation of what we thought were family was built on marriage, and from that then children, if that has not existed and as the trend has been going against that for the last 60 plus years, what is it saying about the view of families in the future? Let's look at just a couple of more and then I'll go on. I just wanted to share in terms of same gender or same sex relationships, about 12% of those cohabitating are of same gender that are raising children. I think that's important. And that trend is increasing, especially since the Marriage Equality Act was passed under President Obama. What I'm suggesting here is we just let all these numbers just sink in, because I wanted to create a statistical idea for you as to how families are actually changing. Not how families should be, but how they are. When we think about that, the genie is out of the box, as the saying goes. And at this point, or my mother would say, you can't put spilled milk back in the cart. So at this point, how do we think about families? How do we help families as we are evolving and we're developing new ways of being in family? How do we foster and forge a way forward? Especially because children are still the product of relationships between male and female. Parenting is an important part of society. How do we then rethink about family, the role of family, family structures, and family systems? Are families now no longer important in society? Do we abdicate what used to be what the family did over to the state, meaning family was the first institution of education. That's where you first learned your name, how to spell your name. You learned how to talk. You learned values. You learned how to be polite, how to be kind. You learned how to get along with other people. You learned what it means to be in community and to live with other people. That was the role of the family. Going back further, family was where you also learned about the production, because families were not just social units, but economic units. How do we live together, and how do we develop and grow our food, or how do we provide those things that we need to live and survive in community? Family was where you learned that, where you were taught that, where you observed that, you saw that, and you experienced that. What does it mean now? What is the new definition of families? Is there a new definition? How do we move forward as a unit, as a family, community? Let me offer this as I prepare to close this first lesson out, is that families have always changed. There is no moment in the past, no historical moment when families were perfectly formed. And there was this ideal way of people being in relationship. When I was a kid, it was The Father Knows Best, or the Ozzie and Harriet. Those TV shows that was mainly rooted in, white America, mom and dad, the two kids, the white picket fence, and that was the ideal way those of us that were watching television thought a family was supposed to be. The truth is that wasn't ideal even for them, because that didn't exist even for them. Families are complex, complicated units, complicated structures, complicated systems. And as our self-understanding changes, we change how we come together in community, we change how we form relationships, we change how we forge ties that bind us together. Ultimately, that is what family does. That's the difference between, say, family and friends. And some of our friends are lifelong, and we feel really, tied to them. But family has a way of binding us together, solidifying our connection, either through blood or through choice, because ultimately marriage wasn't by blood, it was through choice. Choice or someone else's choice. But the ties formed through blood were ties that could not be broken. What will be what marks our families of the future? How can we as faith communities support families as they're changing? We can't go back and say this is how it should be. We have to work with how it is. And how can we use the tools that we have, the knowledge that we have, to now begin to support families right now, knowing what we know, that families are not, for the most part, a married couple with children. That's not the reality of our society. Let's stop talking about what should be and just deal with what is. The reality of our society is that's not what is, and it's not what people are preferring. It's not where they're going. That's changing. And they're not going in that direction because probably something wasn't quite right the way that family system was. It may have worked for some at one time, but it wasn't optimum for all. And so usually you don't change what works. Usually if it's working, if it's functioning, if everyone is happy and doing well in it, you're going to keep that going. We usually see change through the process of survival when there's a need that arises in the human spirit to say, this is no longer working. That hat don't fit my head no more. I can't live like this. It's sucking the oxygen out of me. Something has to give. And so change is forged because the human spirit, and I said this, in one of our other gatherings, the human spirit will not be bound. You can try to lock it up and contain it and force fit it into one way of being, but ultimately it's going to force itself out because it will not be bound. And it will ultimately keep like water, keep finding and rising to its source. It will keep moving and rising to its source. It will blaze a trail through concrete. It will blaze a trail through rocks. It will find a way. And I would suggest that that's what's happening as our families are evolving and changing today. So I'm going to end here. I just want to tell you what we're going to be covering over the next few weeks. And we'll probably be presenting this like 2 weeks on or 1 week on this week, because we're off next week because it's the Labor Day week. And Tuesday, we're not going to be open. So we'll come back the week after that. And we may do 2 weeks on and a week off. But I'm going to try to do about 4 to 6 lessons. And I want to introduce this concept, first of all, to those who may not understand what it is when we say the New Age. And a lot of people hear that and they think of some sci-fi, they think of something really out there. But ultimately, what we're talking about is the rise and fall of empires, the rise and fall of nations, how governments change, our systems change, our societies change. You know, at one time, the Roman Empire was the empire. Right now, in other times, it was the Egyptians, it was other great empires throughout the world. What we're seeing now is that our system of government, our way of being right now is, I was talking with someone just this week and they said, this century may be marked as the decline of the American empire. It may be marked historically as the ending of the fall of the American experiment. I don't know. I don't try to give a forecast on that. All I can say is that the world is changing. We can't fight against change. There's one scripture that says you can't kick against the prick. You will only end up bloody and it will do you no good. You can get in the flow or you can let the flow overflow you. So I want to just introduce this idea. What is the New Age? And what will the new family structure and systems look like in this new age? As we're changing our social economic structures, our political structures, our religious institutions, our educational institutions, everything around us is changing. How will family look? And how can we envision a way of being in family that's healthy and wholesome and supports all of us in this new age? I want to talk also about what is the new family structure and family system. I want to spend some time really brick by brick building upon this in a very practical way. Then I want to talk about what will be the role of the institutional church, if any, in the new age. Will there be a need for the institutional church? How will that change? What will be its role? And not just the church, but for faith communities. And then finally, what is the new age? What is the triumphant life in the new age? What will life be like? What can we look forward to? What can we hold in our vision? What is our hope for as things are changing? Because sometimes when you're in the midst of change, it's like everything is just falling down. There's a lot of smoke, a lot of dust, and nothing makes sense. And you really can't see beyond the smoke. But I want us to hold a vision in mind that beyond the building coming down, beyond the decay, beyond the smoke, that there is a light at the end. There is a horizon, and on that horizon is a new day. It's here. It's not coming, it's here. It's just that we're in that transition from the old to the new. And if we can hold that in mind, keep that within our hearts and move forward, knowing that there is life on the other side of this, not after we die, but right here and right now. That beloved community that is supported by the family. All right, we're going to end here. I thank you for just sharing with me today. Again, don't forget to subscribe to our Tribe Life Center YouTube channel. Hit like and share, if you would, with your social media platform. You can leave a comment. If you have a question, I will certainly get back to you and respond to your question and your comment. I appreciate you just listening and sharing this. And I'm always open for your critical review of what is shared. So until next time, may spirit be with you. May you be well. And may peace abide within your heart and within your home. Ashe and amen. Great.